Cornhole Champions, I'm Zachary Oren Smith. I'm sitting here with Amy Rivers, and for our second story, we turn to the special election in Sioux City. Local Democrats have been beating the odds in the Iowa legislative races. In the last year, there was the surprise flip of that Senate seat in Clinton by now Senator Mike Zimmer, but in just a few days, we're going to see if it's possible to do it in western Iowa, an area that has seen very few Democrats elected to the Iowa legislature. In that race, 37-year-old Catelin Drey, the founder of Moms for Iowa, wants to push the trend forward. I spoke with her about her work to make policymaking a little more accessible to parents who don't always have the time to get in the door. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. She's running on a platform focused on working families, childcare affordability, and strengthening public educations. Catelin, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to start just because Moms for Iowa is kind of at least in local Instagram, is kind of one of these kind of ubiquitous channels, right? And I'm curious about kind of where did it begin, right? What's the story of the formation of that handle?
About 2 years ago, I had been following, prior to those 2 years ago, I had been following some other kind of national political influencers. And one of them was really beating the drum of contacting your local representation and speaking to your senators and representatives, both state and federal, talking about what's important to you. And so I had been doing that, right? I had been making those phone calls. And then through that, it was like, this is not as hard as people might feel it to be or think it to be. And one of the other states put out a call. She had a gorgeous little map that she put together and said, we're looking for moms in these other states. So there's Moms for Oregon, there's Moms for Kansas, we've got one in Michigan. Motherhood for Good is kind of one of our flagships in Wisconsin. Howdy Politics is in Texas. And so a lot of these states that have kind of built a very grassroots collective of women primarily who are saying, we're fed up with this and we're tired of sitting on our hands and doing nothing. And so through that, I was like, well, I'm in Iowa. How hard could this be? Very much like Elwood's moment of like, I can figure it out. And I spend a lot of my time on Instagram anyway. And,
totally.
And so that's really what it was born out of, was I wanted to model for parents in Iowa that it doesn't have to be hard or scary to contact your legislators, and it can help you feel so much less helpless, right? Like, we're in this moment where people are so frustrated and the political air is so toxic that people have just checked out. And to try and turn the wheel on that a little bit and engage people in a way that's approachable, it's right in their phone, and just say, here's how you can participate in making policy that makes your life better.
Yeah, I think there's a gulf of effort of hours that sits between someone deciding to make a couple phone calls, maybe write a couple emails, and decide to run for office, right?
Yes, I'm learning that the gulf is quite wide, actually.
Totally. I'm curious, from your vantage, I mean, like, I want you to take me to that first call, right? Like, because maybe you grew up in a family that just did this out of the box. I've met a couple of those. Mine wasn't, right? I mean, so like for me, the idea of like picking up of searching for the right number, of calling the secretary, the Senator Joni Ernst, press secretary, or Senator Joni Ernst front office phone worker, right? Like,
yeah.
How do you get to that point? How do you prepare for that? Like, was there a particular issue that motivated you early on? What did that look like?
The initial issue really was around gun violence prevention in our schools. There was a moment after Uvalde, Texas, where it was the first mass shooting that I had been a parent, and the horror of thinking about sending my child to school on one of the last days, and you hold their hand and you wish them the best and you're celebrating the successes at the end of the year. And then you get that phone call, and it is unconscionable to me that we have sat back and done nothing to fortify our schools, protect our kids. And my family, like Rob Sand, we hunted. I grew up with guns in the home, and I believe that responsible gun owners want to be known as responsible gun owners. They believe in protections and safety and the proper training, and so that's really kind of the flagship issue from my early activism.
Mm-hmm.
But then it really does come down to making all policy effective. I heard Stacey Abrams say, like, political doesn't mean partisan. And so we have conflated those two words to mean the same thing. But really, all policy, all of our life is political. Whether or not we can buy a home in the neighborhood we want to live in, whether or not we can see an OBGYN when we are pregnant or need reproductive care. And Iowa is last for that right now, which is also unacceptable when you talk about wanting to attract and retain young families in a state whose population is shrinking aside from our immigrants, right? And so all of these things are political, and they can all be rallying cries for different groups. And I was not raised in an overly political family, partisan political family. I have two very stoic Nordic parents from the Midwest, but they did raise me with the value of helping your neighbor and doing the right thing. And this feels like helping my neighbors, and this feels like doing the right thing right now.
Because of the handle for the account, right? Mom, the like kind of role of the mom, the perspective maybe of the mom is like, I think, tied up in the why of your campaign. I want you to talk about like why that is the prism, why that is an effective prism to kind of try to understand what's happening in our state, what's happening at this moment. Can you tell me, spin that out for me a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. The real genesis of this is that I care deeply about my daughter and my family. I care deeply about the community that I live in. I love Sioux City. I am proud to live here. And when you need a mess cleaned up, you send mom. Like, we are doing the things. We're doing all the things, right? We're getting dinner on the table. We're making sure the laundry is done. We're making sure that our kids have the right size shoes. We are scheduling the doctor's appointments. And I have an exceptional partner. So it's not lost on me that my situation is exceptional, right? But I know that mental load, but I also know that we do not have time to mess around. Like, let's get in and make some changes, because people are right now, especially in Iowa, desperate for something to give. When you talk about we're all going to die and our public schools are chronically underfunded, and what does that look like to live in a state whose representation does not reflect the actual will of the people who are being represented?
From your vantage point, I mean, I think the first time I met you was in the state legislative house, or it was state legislature. I think we were tracking some of the similar.
I accosted you. I said, I have to meet him. I recognize that mustache from the internet. I must introduce myself.
I'm curious about, from your vantage point, were there actions taken by the legislature in this past session that, for you, kind of led to this campaign, led you to decide that they're at it?
Yeah, and I could even go back. The dates all squished together because time is a flat circle that doesn't make any sense to me. But I can go back to the voucher session, which I think was last year or 2 years ago, right? That was 2 sessions
2 years ago.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I was contacting my state representation at that time. And when I reached out to my then senator, I was disgruntled, to say the least, and really discouraged by the fact that most representation did not heed the will of those that they were supposedly speaking for. I have a good working relationship just by nature of being a political advocate online with my representative, JD Schulten, and have gotten to know some of the other, House representatives in the Democratic caucus. And all of them overwhelmingly said, like, people do not want this. Like, even those like JD who live in redder areas, they know that underfunding and diverting money from public schools will ultimately decimate our small communities. And I think we've already seen that. I haven't kept up on how many districts have consolidated or closed since then, but I know that they're feeling the squeeze already. And then when you go into removing AEA funding and restructuring that, Bob Henderson, who's a current representative from Sioux City, he said, well, we're going to study it. But they went ahead and gutted the program and then decided to study it, which is not an effective means of legislating at all. And any parent will tell you that. Like, you got to figure out what the problem is before you can solve it. And so it's just like a real culmination of several issues that I said early on. I was like, okay, well, if you're not going to listen to me, then I'm gonna take your seat. And so the opportunity came up much sooner than I was anticipating. My condolences, obviously, to Senator DeWitt's family. It's a horrible, ugly disease, and I would never wish that upon anyone. But the opportunity is there to make change, and it's time.
Education is one of these that I'm thinking about a lot right now. I have a daughter coming pretty soon, right? And so me and my wife spend a lot of our time thinking about, like, dreaming about kind of what is the world that we want to bring our daughter into. There's a fundamental belief of mine that places make cases for themselves, right? And what better argument for whether to move to a new place, whether to move away from a place, than the education that your student and your household will receive, right? It's a great indicator of property values. It's also a great kind of like reason to stick around in a particular area because the district's just that great. To some extent, the private school vouchers, the education savings accounts are more or less settled law, right? This is kind of in effect. There's this unlimited appropriation from this budget for these accounts. I think Rob Sand has said first place to go with this is greater accountability, right? That we should at least, if we're going to have the system in place, then we need to at least know where these dollars are going. Maybe in addition to accountability, are there some other places that you think we can do to improve the kind of state of private school vouchers in the state?
I mean, in a perfect world, we would rescind that and undo that frankly irresponsible bill. I mean, it's one of the single largest transfers of wealth from working class people to folks who are already qualified to and could afford to send their kids to public school. And I would echo Auditor Sand's, rationale that the first place to start is certainly with greater accountability. In terms of undoing that, I mean, I would not be here if not for being an eternal optimist. Like, I think we have to undo it. And I think when you talk to rural districts, your places and cases like rural school districts, when you lose the school, you lose the community. That's a genesis for so much investment and time and gathering, right? Like, you're not going to have a place to spend a Friday night at a football game if you don't have a high school football team to spend there. And so when we talk about what we can do, I think that's the first thing is to have some transparency around how private schools are spending those dollars, and then do whatever we can to claw back or increase public education funding at the same level.
This is a special election. It's going to be a sprint between now and the August election day.
August 26th.
August 26th election.
It's seared into my brain.
But who's counting, right?
No, it's fine.
Special elections are won by people that can generate the most energy, that can get the people that vote in a special election are your most motivated voters, not necessarily representative of the electorate, I'll mind you, right? I mean, I'm wondering like kind of how you'll work to kind of arc that lightning to capture that interest in your issues and your message here.
Yeah. Last election cycle, I knocked almost 1,000 doors. and on my own as a volunteer, and I did not crest that 1,000 mark, which has let me be greatly disappointed in not closing the last 23 doors. I could have made 23 more contacts. So knocking doors is like one of my favorite things to do. I am, in addition to being an eternal optimist, I am also an extreme extrovert. So I said to my coworkers at my day job and my husband, I was like, I think I'm going to like campaigning. And they all kind of looked at me like, how had that not occurred to you yet? So I'm going to try and knock on every door of every likely voter that I can.
That was Catelin Drey, Democratic nominee for Iowa's Senate District 1. The special election is Tuesday, August 26th. So if you're in that district, be sure to turn out. Catelin, do you know when early voting starts?
Yeah, early voting starts on August 6th. It's 20 days before the election day. And there will be early voting available for folks Monday through Friday at the Woodbury County Auditor's Office. So everyone in the district almost everyone in the district that does go out to some of our rural outlying communities into Lawton. But nearly everyone lives in Sioux City. So easy to get down to the courthouse and vote early.
That's great. Catelin Drey, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was Catelin Drey, a Democrat running in the special election for Sioux City Senate District 1. The election is on August 26th. Early voting is ongoing. So if you're in the district, go in and wait. And early voting is a super easy process. Be sure to bring your ID and vote in this election. And with that, let's take a break.